students, it's Miss Reed again. Welcome to another video. Today's video is about identifying the arguments of the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. All right, so the story between these two groups of people actually begins at the Constitutional Convention, where our Constitution was written. And after the Constitutional Convention is over, we have to go through a formal process to ratify the Constitution. What that means is that the 13 states have to sign and give formal consent and approval to the Constitution before it can become the official law of the land. Well, turns out there are two opposing sides to ratifying the Constitution. So as these 13 states decide on whether or not they want to approve and ratify the Constitution, the two sides that grow are the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. So people who call themselves Federalists say, yeah, we love the Constitution. We wrote it really well in that convention. Let's ratify it. Let's make it the law of the land. Let's go. The Anti-Federalists, they are a little bit more hesitant and they are against the ratification of the Constitution and say, no, we need to make a few more changes before we let this Constitution become the law of the land. Some famous Anti-Federalists and Federalists are actually still on our money today we have in the United States. So you can see here Alexander Hamilton, he's on the $10 bill. He is a famous Federalist. And then here's Thomas Jefferson. He is on our $2 bill, and I believe he's also on a coin. In fact, I want you guys to tell me what coin he's on. I'll have to dig through my little change purse to find that out. He's a very famous Anti-Federalist. All right, so we're going to start by looking at the arguments of the Federalists. The Federalists, again, these are the people who want to ratify the Constitution. They like it as it is. The Federalists believe that the federal government should have more power than the states. And guys, this is how you can remember the Federalists and one of their key arguments. They call themselves Federalists because they want the federal government to have more power. The argument of the Federalists is that a Bill of Rights is not necessary because the government is going to check itself, right? We have this system of checks and balances. Nah, the government's not going to abuse its power because it can check itself. Some famous Federalists are Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and look at that, John Jay, the very same person the school is named after. And then how can you recognize a Federalist on the street? You can recognize them because they're going to be wealthy, they're going to be urban, that means they live in cities, they're educated, and generally they're businessmen. All right, so those are your Federalists who like the Constitution. Next is our Anti-Federalists who say, no, we're not ready to ratify the Constitution until changes are made. The Federalists are kind of going back to the Articles of Confederation, thinking that the states should have more power than the federal government. The biggest argument of an Anti-Federalist is that a Bill of Rights needs to be added to the Constitution in order to protect citizens from an abusive government. They say we cannot ratify until we have that Bill of Rights. Some famous leaders include George Mason, Patrick Henry, and also Thomas Jefferson. And then how do you recognize the Anti-Federalists on the street? These are going to be your farmers. They live in rural communities, which means they live in the countryside, and they're going to be the middle class and the poor people in the country. So it takes 3 years for this ratification debate to come to a close. And in those 3 years, you're going to have a series of essays written by Federalists and by Anti-Federalists, where they're going to try and get people to go to their side, to ratify or to not ratify the Constitution. So Anti-Federalists are going to talk about the rights of Americans. They're going to threaten that the Constitution will be like a king. The Federalists are going to say, no, we're a republic. Our government is going to control itself because of that system of checks and balances. And it takes 3 years for these arguments to go back and forth throughout the 13 states before we come to a conclusion. And hey guys, remember, when you have an argument with someone, if you want to end that argument, so if the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists want to end their argument, they need to create a compromise. And so the compromise that is created is that, yes, the Constitution does get ratified with 10 amendments that become our Bill of Rights that we have today. So that is our story of the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. Hope you learned something.